colleagues and I and Gamechangers Readership Promotion Network have been for many years now dedicated towards promoting learning and reading in Nigeria and across the world. And we're very excited that this year we're taking it a notch higher in presenting a panel session of discussion around learning from people whom we have over the years observed as delivering on these specific values around learning. And you'll be very excited by our panel today. And I would encourage you to stay locked in because there is a lot to be talked about. There's a lot of knowledge to be shared. These folks have been incredible in their own industries and in their own field. And we just want to get some insights into how they have been navigating reading, learning, and knowledge construction over the years. And give us your attention, and I promise you would not regret any second of this time spent here. So without much further ado, I will go into what our agenda would look like for the day. Today, we'll be discussing broadly on three broad topics, which is reading, learning, and knowledge and knowledge construction. And we have some experts to help us go through that. So our agenda for the day is a quick introduction of every one of us who are participating here. I will quickly introduce myself. I am, and then go through with the other three panelists. Yes, you can mute yourself as soon as you join, please, so that we can't distract others. So my name is Obinna Udeh, and I'm a credit risk associate here in JP Morgan in Plano, Texas. I completed my MBA recently in Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And prior to that, I worked in Sterling Bank in Nigeria, where I was in commercial banking for about 8 years. And at the end of as part of my experience in the banking industry, I thought of pursuing an MBA to advance my experience, and I'm still in banking today. I was part of founding a club called the Bridge Investment Club in 2020, and we had a broad exposure into understanding how to set up an investment club. And recently, I authored a book around helping people who want to start and run successful investment clubs as well, titled Friends Along the Way. But today I'll be your moderator, and I'll go into other members of our panel who are incredible resource persons. The very first, very own Dr. Eberechukwu Ihemezie. Dr. Eberechukwu is a research associate in Imperial College in London. And then before joining that, he was also a postdoctoral research fellow in, how do you say this university? A very...
Aberechukwu University is a Welsh one.
Aberechukwu University Business School. That's incredible. Okay, in Wales and United Kingdom. And he's also been a lecturer and a researcher with Department of Agri-Economics in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where he graduated with a BSc first class in Agri-Economics, and then a master's distinction and a PhD in environmental and development and environmental economics, respectively, for his master's and PhD from the University of Leeds. So Eberechukwu will be joining us today as one of our panelists, and we're very excited to hear more from his deep insights. We also have Chinwe Uzoma. Chinwe is a business operations and process optimization specialist with over 10 years of experience helping organizations streamline operations and deliver measurable efficiency gains. It will interest you to note that Chinwe has an MSc in Business and Information Technology, and she's been combining that with business acumen with technology-driven mindset. But one very exciting thing is that Chinwe is one of those incredible people who have reinvented herself. And from a background, I understand, in biology, I guess, in undergrad, she's able to build an entire career completely different from what she has experienced in the past. And some of that is what she'll be sharing with us today in how to navigate learning. And last but not the least, we have an engineer who is going to handle knowledge construction for us. Engineer Pascal Odinde is an energy professional with extensive knowledge in corrosion management and currently serves as a senior corrosion and inspection engineer at Renaissance Africa Energy Company. I think this is the new name for one of the popular Nigerian companies. I think, Pascal, if you can help us know which
Yeah,
company this
Shell
was.
Petroleum
Oh,
Development
awesome.
Company.
Awesome. So Shell Petroleum, currently known as Renaissance African Energy Company. He enjoys reading, trying new things, and is a Liverpool fan. Not a very good season for you guys today, but very excited to have Engineer Pascal Odinde to the team as well. So without further ado, we're going to go into exploring. These are the topics that they'll be talking to us about today. And I would yield the floor to the first panelist, it's Eberechukwu Ihemezie, who will be talking to us on reading and building a reading life that shapes your 2026 and beyond. So I'll yield the floor to you. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Obinna. Thank you, everyone. Obi, I would like to share my screen because you asked us to prepare a short presentation, so we can build up.
Absolutely. Can go ahead and do that.
Okay. So I've sent you a request to share. Okay, great. All right, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so I welcome everyone once again to this exciting interactive discussion on reading, learning, and knowledge construction. As Obinna already introduced, my name is Ebere, and I'm currently working at the Center for Environmental Policy at Imperial College London. Today, well, first of all, I would like to thank all of us that are here because I'm not sure if we, as organizers, we remembered that maybe we didn't have faith that Nigeria would get this far in AFCON because Nigeria is currently playing match.
Yeah, yeah.
I just watched it match a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So this also shows how much value we have for reading, learning, and knowledge. I want to thank everyone for that. And I want to just give a very quick overview because I'll be focusing my presentation on reading. A very little oversight on what it means to build a reading life. And then the rest of the discussion will be more interactive and ask questions and then discuss with each other. So in terms of outline, my presentation will focus on basically two things: reading for depth, consistency and transformation, and then how reading forms emotional intelligence and leadership. All right, so to start with, the first thing is to unpack what it means to build a reading life. What does it really mean to build a reading life? And the first thing I want to mention here is that a reading life is simply not the number of books you read, because at the beginning of this year, for example, in our reading club, Gamechangers, we've itemized the number of books that we expect our members and those who follow us to read. It's not like it is a bad thing, but I want to just mention at this point that building a very solid reading life is not about volume. It's not about the number of books you read, but it's more about the following things. And I identified three factors, that defines what it means to have a solid and in-depth reading life. One is quality of engagement. The quality of engagement you have with the books you read. So in this case, it is more about the depth, how much you allow the books, to how much you get, how much did you get into the books that you read. So you can read, for example, throughout last year, of course I have the book. There are so many books I bought last year that I haven't even finished reading them up to now, but there are about 3 books that I think at that point in my life, I needed to, I will say more about it in the course of this presentation, but I needed to focus more on that. I remember I read one of those books about 3 times, so it is about going in depth. You can pick up one book, read that book again, over and over again, in order to get more insight. And you can even finish reading a book the first time, and by the time you're reading it for the second time, you get it. Why is it that people read Bible back to back to back to back to back, over time, and anytime you read it the second time, you get another insight? It's the same thing about, so it's about quality of engagement, the volume, depth over volume. So don't be discouraged when you hear people say, this year I have read 10 books, this year I've read 20 books. It's really not about that, Then the second thing is consistency of practice. You see, of course, this is January. At the beginning of every year, most people have that motivation. They've set goals in terms of what they want to do, personal development, career, leadership, and so on and so forth. So you could see, if you go to the gym in January, gym is full, people are beginning to diet. There's so much intensity in January in terms of what people want to do. But by the time you start getting towards, middle of the year, even from August, from April, May, June, you see the intensity begins to drop. The motivations begin to drop. And people, by the end of the year, they've lost focus of the goals they've set out for themselves at the beginning of the year. So when it comes to reading, consistency is what matters. It is better to pick up 1 or 2 books that you have interest in and read them. And of course, I'm going to give us some tips on how to do this. But the most important thing is consistency. You don't have to finish 1 book in January. The idea of setting a goal, I must finish 1 book in January, I must finish 1 book in 1 week. That's not the idea about reading. It's about how you get into the books and how consistent you are in making sure you're reading books that change your life. And then the third thing is integrating what you've learned from those books into your daily life, which brings us to the most important thing is the aim of reading is not to be informed. That's just the surface level. The aim of reading is transformation. How do you, apply the things you read in order to transform your life, in order to make significant changes in your life, in your attitude, in everything that concerns you, So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on these 3 factors that defines what it means to have an in-depth or a solid reading life. So reading beyond surface. And the first thing here is to clarify the difference between shallow reading and deep reading. And many people who claim to be avid readers are actually very shallow readers, because when it comes to shallow reading, there are some factors that shows that you don't read in depth. And one of them is skimming. You can pick up a book and in less than 2 days, you finish a book of over 300 pages, But when you ask the person to criticize the book, to analyze the book, to reflect over the book, you find out that the person didn't really get, because there's what we call the spirit of a book or the spirit of the author. When an author is writing something, there's one key message. Of course, I'm a scientist, and when we write scientific papers, and that's when you see top journals now, they try to limit the number of words you write in a scientific paper, because it is not so much about volume. It's about hitting the nail at the head. So when you pick up a book, at the end of every book, what is the key information that the author is trying to pass? Getting the spirit of a book you can't catch the spirit of a book by skimming over a book, or quickly just reading over the words just to say I have finished reading the book. The opposite of that will be slow, reflective reading. In fact, you can be on a particular page for some hours, reflecting on it, thinking about it, allowing the book to talk to you, and getting more insight from the book. So deep reading is something you do slowly. It's something you reflect as you do it. The opposite also is passive reading. Passive reading is simply reading without engagement, reading without in-depth analysis, reading without questioning the book, just reading for the sake of, taking in information without really analyzing and reflecting over it. Of course, the opposite is active questioning. This is how you really do in-depth reading. Because most times authors make mistakes. Of course, some authors are biased. Some of the things you even read in books, as when one of the things we do in our club is to encourage people to read. It's not everything you read in a book that applies to you. Context matters a lot. Nuances, you need to question, does this really matter in my context? Will this apply? If I apply this principle, will it work for me? And the only way you can come to that realization is active questioning, as you read a book. All right. And then, of course, shallow reading, you easily forget whatever you've read, but in-depth reading or deep reading is something you always remember it, because you tie it to something currently happening in your life or something that you are about to do in your life. So it's memorable, it's integrative, And then, of course, shallow reading is information-driven. You just want to, pack information. You want to gather a lot of information as much as you can. But deep reading is more meaning-driven. You're looking for something, I'm going to unpack some of these things just later on. Just follow me, So in summary of this, deep reading asks the following questions. What is the author really arguing? What is the main point of this book? Why does this challenge or affirm my belief? Or how does this challenge or affirm my belief? You must be able to ask yourself, does this, what the author is presenting, does it affirm what I already believe, in terms of why you're reading that book, or does it challenge it? And then lastly, does this apply to my life, leadership and relationship? So for you to engage in deep reading, you must be able to ask yourself these three critical questions. All right. So what are the practices that cultivate or that can help you to cultivate deep reading? This is from personal experience. One is read fewer books at a time. For someone like in my profession, because my profession is all about reading and writing, and reading books on personal development, books on career, books outside scientific books or journals, it's kind of a form of a break for me, because to be honest, scientific papers are boring. They're quite very, very boring. And one of the things I was doing last year was doing a systematic review, and I had to read over 700 journal papers. At the point, I hated my life. I was like, what am I doing? So one way through which I get out of that madness is to read books that I can relate with, books that can solve personal problems in my life, books that I enjoy reading. In fact, at a point, there was a time last year, I picked up Chinwe Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and I started reading it again. It was a book I read a long time ago, So, but the whole idea is to try and read fewer books. Don't pack so many books, trying to finish all of them at once. And then, most important, every book must serve a purpose. You don't just read for curiosity. And I'll give you a typical example. Last year, this is my personal, because everything I'm trying to share here is my personal experience. Last year, I was struggling with distraction, Of course, I live in the UK, and for those of us that have lived in Western countries with, small families, we don't have a lot of social support. My wife has got her own career, and we've got kids, we need to so I've got so many distractions from, trying to marry, family life and career life and all that, so much. And I felt I wasn't giving my best to my career. At the point, I felt I'm not doing my best. I mean, my boss were not complaining. I was delivering on what they expected, but I know the target I've set for myself, I'm not delivering on it. For example, last year, I only published one paper. It's crazy. So I felt I'm not doing well. And what did I do? I started looking for books that will guide my life again, and that was how I came across books like Deep Focus, Digital Minimalism, because I also found out that in as much as I didn't have enough time for my career, I was spending so much time on social media. I was spending so much time, by the time you say, okay, maybe after bathing the kids and helping in household chores, you're tired, and then you pick up your phone to relax, and then you start scrolling. Before you know it, 1 hour, 2 hours, and within that 2 hours, you could have done something, So I know that something needs to be done. And I decided to go for books that will address that problem. And one of the books that really shaped me was Deep Focus. I read Deep Focus. I read that book 3 times, and it was the book sank into me. And the essence of reading the book, again, you see here, that takes me back to what I said initially, was not just to get information. The final essence is transformation. Because if you finish reading a book, you must take action. I started asking, so what are the things that I must do as a result of this book and then that will put me back? Of course, one is to manage how I use my phone. There are so many social media apps I deleted. I deleted Instagram, I deleted Facebook at that point, because of course I was writing some proposals for grants. And of course that requires in-depth concentration in order to do a good job. I deleted all social. I only left WhatsApp because I use it to communicate with families everywhere. And even on WhatsApp, I had to put, and all these things I'm telling you, I learned it from those books I read. So the point is, as I was reading those books, in fact, I finished reading a chapter. It was immediately I finished reading the chapter, I deleted the apps immediately. I haven't even finished reading the book. I said, oh, okay, this is what I need to do here. I deleted those apps that I found very distracting. So I took action immediately on some apps like WhatsApp, because of course, if you look at the job we do, also it requires replying emails from time to time, and we'll get these emails on phone, so you can reply on time and all that. But you see that most times when WhatsApp message drop, it's becoming this. But there are settings on WhatsApp that you can set. When calls and messages enter, you won't even know until you open the app. So I have to set those things that way, so that anytime I'm opening WhatsApp, I'm doing it on purpose. I know I want to go here and check something. So I won't be with my phone and a message or a call will come and I will see the call. No, unless I look at it. And you can set your phone that way. So the idea is I took that step, that I got those books, not because someone recommended the books for me, because I think at that point in time I needed those books to get my life back on track. Again, while reading, annotate, try, underline, write marginal reflections. And this is one of the reasons why in my small personal library, if you come to my house and you see my books, Barry, can I tell JP, can I take this book? I don't borrow books. I rather give you money to go and buy them, because inside those books, I've written my personal reflections on them. So anytime I find, maybe I'm bored, I find something challenging, I don't go reading the whole book again. I simply open it and go to those my personal, because those are the ones that speak directly to me. Those are the ones that speak directly to my problem. So try and underline, try and have, I always say this in case we have students here, this was actually my secret of academic success at undergraduate level. For every course I took at the university, I had 2 notebooks. One was the notebook for the general class. The second one was the notebook I used to prepare for exams. And that notebook is a combination of the note I took in class, the textbooks I read, the recommended textbooks, solving past questions. And so it's kind of a more in-depth and deep reflection. So it's quite a very big, and I had that throughout my undergraduate period. When I started reading, I also have this small journal papers where there was a particular book I read that, I think, this book by Mark Manson, and How Not to Give a Fuck or something like that. I read that book over and over and over again. And in fact, I have a particular paper where I wrote my reflections on that book. It's almost like a book on its own again, trying to understand what that book is saying and where it applies directly to my life. So it's important to, not just read for the sake of reading. You can read one book and that book will change your life. And you can read 20 books and it will not have any impact in your life. So the most important essence of reading is transformation, is to solve a particular problem in your life and not just to read for the sake of reading. So as we are heading this year, what I always tell people is, what are those things you really want to achieve this year? Find 1 or 2 books that speaks to those things. Take your time and read those books throughout the year, and you will see the result at the end of the year. Again, pause after each chapter to summarize your own words. Is the something like I've already said, and then reread complex or meaningful sections. There are some sections that you need to read and read again in order to really understand what the author is saying. And when you finish this, one of the outcomes, one of the things that will come out of it is improve critical thinking, because that's the whole essence of critical thinking. And see, this is when I came to do masters in the UK. This was the sharp difference between our educational system in Nigeria and educational system, because our educational system in Nigeria is almost like garbage in, garbage out. It doesn't really encourage critical thinking, because critical thinking requires you to reflect on what you've read, analyze it, pull out the merits and demerit, the pros and cons, and see how it applies into your life. So when you read books like this, your critical thinking improves. And I'll tell you, this will affect every other aspect of your life. We live in an era, timing, right?
Yeah, I was trying to get
Oh,
attention to
okay.
that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll need to rush through the other parts now,
All right.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. All right. So, yeah. So it will improve your critical thinking. You become better in comprehension. And of course, you retain more of the things you've read. So next is to address issue of consistency. What are the strategies that will help you to be consistent in reading? We've addressed the first issue. The second one is consistency. Set non-negotiable time of reading. And as a starter, you don't have to read 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours a day. Especially all of us are busy with career. All of us are busy with family life. 10, 15 minutes daily. It could be early in the morning. It could be during your break. It could be when you're traveling to work. Just set out 10 to 15 minutes daily when you read without distraction. Try to tie your reading to an existing habit. That's why it's linked to what I said earlier. It could be your morning routine. It could be your evening wind down. For me, I like reading before I sleep so that from there I can just beside my bed, I always have my pen and paper, so you can sleep. Then keep a visible book or digital reader accessible. If you're reading some books, of course, in this era, almost you can find every book in digital format, but I always encourage people to get hard copy books, it makes a difference. And then don't track your reading progress daily. You will be discouraged because there are some days you will not read. That's a fact. If we all come here and claim to you that we read every day, we are lying to you. We all don't read every day. I don't read every day. That's the truth. Because my work, my family life doesn't allow that, But you can track your progress weekly. You can even track your progress monthly. Just make sure that you are reading over time, And of course, the outcome of this is you can the only way that transformation comes is as a result of what you expose yourself daily, what you do every day. It's not what you do when you are charged, occasional enthusiasm. Transformation is as a result of what you expose to yourself daily. And then reading then becomes an identity-based habit. It's not a tax. And that is the most problem that people find about reading. They see reading as a difficult thing. They ask you to read a book, you're struggling, you find reading as a tax, you think it's a work, Reading is not a tax. If you keep doing it little, start with the books you like. If it's fictional or non-fictional books, whatever your area of interest is, over time it becomes an identity habit rather than a task.
Dr. Berry, I want to keep the additional slides you have
Okay.
for the question and answer interaction sessions we'll have towards the end so that you can share more insights. We don't want to just cut it and say no, but we can go back to those and talk about it. I want to quickly wrap up with a few questions to you so that you can maybe talk about that briefly. Maybe if there's a slide or two that will touch on this question. I like what you said regarding identifying a problem in your life, and this is like a personal purpose-driven reading plan or structure where you identify a specific problem. In your case, you shared that you've not, in a single year, you published only one paper, and you immediately identify that this must be a problem from your focus, that you are not maybe very focused with your work or your career, and you immediately, in identifying that problem, went in search for books or materials that address that problem. And then you identified the deep focus, the book you talked about, and a few other titles that addressed it. And you mentioned that you went on to study purposefully on that deep focus to be able to get, in fact, you say you read it how many times? Twice, you said? Or two times or three times? Three times,
Yeah,
okay.
3 times.
To be able to get, and in the first chapter, you were able to immediately delete. I need to read the chapter that makes you delete WhatsApp, and no, to delete Instagram immediately for me, because I need that chapter in my life at this time. But
Well,
I like the
I have those
structure you
apps
have.
again. I don't have that problem again. So I have WhatsApp and I have all those apps again.
I need to go back to that and maybe come back to it later on. So I like the fact that there's this structure with it, those three very simple steps: identifying a problem, searching for books that address those problems, and studying meticulously to find solutions to those problems. And maybe a fourth step we may want to add is taking an action in line with what you have learned from those books. So my question is this: how deep should I go in a book before I expect to start harvesting lessons? Because granted, media and books, materials, whether videos, movies, and whatnot, have a certain message. Some of them can delay the plot line towards the end and all that. And it can get boring. You can be like, I'm wasting my time and so on. But how will I be able to vet a book and know that this book will give me the quality I'm looking for? And then how deep into the book should I go? And if I'm not getting that outcome, I should drop the book or do something else. What would be your advice on that?
Should I answer now or?
Yes, you can answer now.
Okay, yeah. So the first step towards reading is actually skimming. In as much as skimming is not deep reading, it is actually the first step towards deep reading because not every book, of course, most times titles can be misleading as well. You can pick up a book that you think will address a particular issue, but at the end of the day, when you read through the book or even towards the middle, you find out that this book is really not speaking to your problem. So one way to address that is to first of all skim through the whole book. You know how you pick up a chapter of a book and you just quickly read through and you're not in depth, you're not reading in depth, you're not going deep into it. And if you skim through a book and you find out that the book is going to address your problem, that is when you now go back and start reading in depth. So that's how deep you can go into it. So after skimming through a book and you find out that it's not addressing your issues, you can drop the book. It's not a must, you must read every book. There
Okay.
are books I've started reading. I have it in my house. There are books I've started reading. Halfway, I dropped them. I didn't even read them up to halfway. After skimming through the book, I found out that this is not going to solve my problem, or I didn't really find it much interesting. I dropped
Yeah.
it. Perhaps sometimes I drop them with the hope of coming back to them in the future, but
Yeah.
most times we always don't have that time. So I think that's one way through which I address that problem. So you can
Absolutely.
go more in depth
Right.
by skimming first, and then if you
Okay.
find it interesting and useful, you now go more in depth. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Berry. This is a fascinating one. We have more insights in the third speaker today, who is going to go deeper into transformation from learning, how you can get transformed from information. I think it's literally titled From Information to Transformation, and so on. And I thank you so much for this insight. And then what you said about skimming, I also thought about a few people use some kind of maybe if people have reading what people have reviews that people have written about a book before you go ahead and order a book or buy a book,
Mm.
and find out from what others have read. There's a book I was going to start. I'm not a fiction reader. I prefer non-fiction books because I get so invested in titles. That is exactly why I don't like fictional books. I said to myself one day when reading Chimamanda's Purple Hibiscus that nobody will bring me to tears again just by her fictional writing. This did not happen. Chimamanda, why am I crying about a story like this? And so on and so forth. I still went back and read Americana at the point, but then when you go through certain reviews of some books, you can know if this is going to be a waste of my time or
Yeah.
not, and then you may just move
Mm.
along in that way. Please, can we use the emoji icons? I think we should have some of those on Zoom to give a round of applause to Dr. Ebere. We're going to be having him back again when he will address some of the other content he has on his slide. Thank you so much, Ebere. All right. So we are going to be moving to our next panelist, Chinwe Uzoma, who is a senior business operations specialist at Genesys. Chinwe, can you share your screen? Are you able to?
I'll be sharing it at the end, towards the
Okay,
end.
great, great. So please let's make welcome to Chinwe, who will be talking to us on the second part of our seminar or our sessions today, which is learning, self-directed learning in a noisy AI-driven world. Chinwe, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and you can tell. Thank you, Dr. Ebere, for that wonderful session. So it gives validation to me. At the beginning of last year, I read Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism. So it feels good to hear that someone else read it. I deleted all my social media apps and left LinkedIn. That was a mistake anyway, because LinkedIn was the new Facebook. And it kind of made everything futile. And one of the things that Carl said in the book, he said, if you're taking out all the social media apps, you have to find something that replaces it. So you're not just taking it out. So I didn't find enough to replace it. So I was spending all my time reading LinkedIn, Facebook ads, or whatever they were doing there. And it was very bad. So yeah, if you would read the book, apply well. Don't be like me. Yeah. on to what we have today. When was the last time I have a question and I would like for all of us to pause on it. When was the last time you saw a topic that piqued your interest? You got to start it and you completed it. Okay, that's one step. And do you remember everything you read from that topic now? Do you remember everything from all those LinkedIn certifications that you've shared? Let's leave it at that. So, once upon a time, the challenge was scarcity of information. People did not know where to find information. Some of us slept in cyber cafes at night. You went through, like, now you know my generation, anyways. We went through we went through libraries, reading big books, like Dr. Ebere said, skimming through, like we had to go through a lot. We didn't have anything to upload it to and say, get me this information or whatever. But if you needed information, you had to fight for it. And it made it easy. Someone said millennials. It made it easier to learn. We didn't know that that struggle was part of the plan. But today, information jumps at us. In fact, some of us have resorted to using premium version of a lot of apps because we can't deal. You have to pay the extra money to make sure Zoom doesn't spam you. Even Facebook has ads now, like everything. So information jumps at you. Now we are running from information. So that means that the current problem we have today is not a lack of information, but something else, which is what we intend to unpack in this. Few months ago, I stumbled on a drive that I saved and I called it Power Learning. I think I saved this drive like I don't know how many guys. So it's so terrible. I don't even know when I saved it. But it had a lot of stuff. It had stuff from photography. It had stuff from it had some project management. It had a lot of stuff that I wanted to learn. And it was power packed. But then, as wonderful as what I had, I forgot it, and I forgot that I forgot it. In fact, if I hadn't stumbled on it, I probably wouldn't have known that I ever had something like that, because I'm not using it anymore now. And if this sounds familiar, I would like you to type in the comment section like me, like if it sounds familiar. Yeah. So right now, the challenge we have or we're facing now is not that we don't have enough information. The challenge we have is not that we are not intelligent. The challenge we have is not that we are not motivated. The current challenge now is that we have not been taught how to learn in a world that is noisy and driven by AI. In fact, if there is anything schools are currently doing is fighting AI. So rather than teach us how to incorporate this new thing that has showed up out of nowhere into our learning, schools are fighting it. They are telling us don't use it. If we find that your AI detectors, I mean, if you've been schooling in the last few, you know the struggle, yeah. So I work in a digital transformation space, and we use in my company. I work in Genesys. We use AI to drive transformation. We use AI to orchestrate experiences. I work in a fast-paced learning environment. What that means is that for me, learning is not just a skill, it's not a hobby, it's a survival thing. If I don't learn, I'm out. That's how the system is. And I've come to realize in the course of my work that the people that learn, that the best people are not the people that learn the fastest. The smartest people are those who know how to apply what they learn when they are called up upon, people that learn intentionally. Today, that's what we're going to be focusing on today, how to learn intentionally, how to be able to apply what you've learned when you're being called upon. At the end of this section, I'm also going to be sharing a couple of AI prompts that can help to facilitate thinking. So one of the things that Dr. Ebere said is that we have to be critical in our thinking. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us different from AI. Guess what? In the next 5 to 10 years, you know how you see something, it's not like the most beautiful, but then they say it's handmade and it's more expensive right now, right? I don't know if you've seen stuff, they tell you it's handmade. You're looking at it, it's not like it's beautiful, but then you're considering the effort that someone put in and you're buying it. In the next few years, we are going to be having things like human thoughts, not AI orchestrated. And the more we keep taking in this AI content the wrong way, the more we keep sorry, please let me know how much time I have so I can set an alarm so I don't go over it. Can you let
Okay.
me know how much time I have now?
Yeah, you have 11 minutes.
Good. Okay, great. I just set a countdown timer. So that's probably the area we are moving to, where we get so used to doing things the AI way, and then we don't have time to think for ourselves. So what you have that is priceless is the ability to think rationally and critically. Don't lose it. And the good thing about AI is that it can help you build on this rather than let you lose it. In one word, if I talk about learning, what comes to your mind is an exercise I want us to do. Like just one word, don't write a sentence, just one word. Is it overwhelming? Is it tiring? Is it endless? Is it rushed? What do you, if you do feel like there's just one word, I would like to see what um we have. Exciting. Okay. Someone is excited. That's amazing. Exciting, curiosity, interesting. I have very nice people here. I feel overwhelmed though when it comes to learning, evolving, interesting, development. Okay, that's good. I think we should keep dropping. If you have something that comes to your mind when you think about learning, keep dropping it. Yeah. So all these things are good. Behind the one thing that also comes to your mind, there are some fears that also comes around it. It's curious, it's enjoyable, it's developmental until you have to pass an exam after writing it, but it's cool. So the reason we have so much information but still feel overwhelmed in today's learning world is because information intake does not equate learning. The fact that you watched a TikTok video that is very educational 2 minutes ago, you cannot even repeat what they said now because information intake is different. The algorithm that we have in most of our social media apps feeds on our attention. So what does it do? It feeds us things that makes us attentive, takes our attention. It doesn't feed you things that make you grow because notice how you see it's a 30 second, it's still also 30 seconds post, but then it's too serious and then you swipe because it doesn't feed you. You like right now, you're not in that place to start. You just want something that fits your attention. So the algorithm fits on our attention. AI accelerates access to information. It accelerates convenience, but it cannot understand it for you. So once we start identifying what AI does and AI is and what AI is not, it's going to help us. These days, careers change faster than job titles. And it's only people that are self-directed learners that can cope in our environments today. If you're not a self-directed learner, well, you have a chance. It's the new year, make it a resolution. I'm going to be sharing a framework that has helped me and it's currently helping a lot of people to internalize what they've learned, and it's called the loop framework. First of all, you have to take the driver's seat of your learning. Don't let the algorithm decide for you what you want to learn. If you want to learn something, go out and first of all know what you want to learn, identify what you want to learn, and start learn. Then identify where you want to learn it from. If you want to learn, say, photography, find a source and start learning it from there. Chances are that the moment you start learning, let's say Udemy, you're going to see ads that are going to present other learning platforms that will teach you faster, cheaper, and focus on what you've decided. Take the master seat, because once you just start going with the wind, one day you're like, you give up. So focus on what you've decided that you want to learn and stick to it. Another thing is to take notes. Don't just run through a course because it says 30 minutes. If a course says 30 minutes, give yourself 1 hour, 30 minutes, because you have to pause in the middle to internalize what it is that you're learning. So the framework is called loop. The first one is locate. The second one is to organize. In the organization, you have to take notes. You have to find what's like Dr. Ebere said, as you're skimming, you have to find what works and what does not work. What are you taking out and what are you keeping in? You don't have to absorb everything. You have to find what works for you and absorb it and keep it. Then operationalize, that's the second O. And that can be said to be practice. But for you to be able to practice something, one of the things that I've done and I encourage us to do, and it's something that has proven to work, is when you want to learn, when you've set a goal, you have to start deciding where you will apply it to. That way, as you're learning, you're intentionally applying it in your mind. So you're not saying you want to learn something, you don't know where you're going to apply it to. It will stick, but it's like some of us that we learned in the Nigerian setting, you would know that we learned names that we never knew they. In fact, sometimes when we came out and saw what they were, we are like, but we learned this thing, we knew the characteristics, we could draw it. So, and that was what made it look like we couldn't even apply when we saw the real things. Someone was telling me the other day that we used the pressure cooker in the lab. I'm like, really? Wow. I can't remember, but she just said one smell of egg. I'm like, that was the pressure cooker. So that was how we learned. But now, as you're learning, the goal is to start visualizing how you intend to apply what it is you're learning. It helps to keep it in. Then you're going to reflect on what it is that you've learned. After you reflect, decide, okay, this is what I've learned, this is what I'm going to keep in, and this is what I'm going to take out. That way, it helps you to decide to be at the driver's seat of your own learning. Most people don't fail because they cannot find the information. They fail because when they are called upon to apply the information that they think they have, they cannot even bring it. There's something that is called the AI paradox. And it's a trap that allows you to feel that because you're scrolling, because you're highlighting, because you're summarizing, that you know it. But then when you're called upon about it, you don't know. The way the human brain works is that it learns through retrieval, it learns through practice, it learns through recalling, it learns through struggle. Learning new things can be frustrating, but guess what? The frustration is part of the process. So if you skip it, like I said earlier, we went to libraries, we've struggled to learn things. So we internalized more because the struggle was part of the learning process. But now the learning jumps at you. So you have to be intentional about wanting to internalize what it is that you've learned. If content doesn't lead to action, then it's entertainment, not education. But guess what? It's not bad. But the problem is when you start mislabeling information for entertainment. So now you think that because you know so much, because you've watched so much content, you can deliver a speech on something. One time I had to do in one of the courses that I studied. By the way, I studied in IU International University of Applied Sciences in Germany. And in one of the courses, I had to do a presentation. I had designed the best slide. I did everything myself, but then when it was time to start talking, thankfully, I practiced before. I realized that there are two very different things. I knew what I wanted to say, but it wasn't coming out the way I planned it. So that being said, I'm going to be re-emphasizing some tips that can help us to internalize learning. Discover what you want to learn intentionally. Don't let the algorithm do it for you. I'm saying it again. Find out what it is you want to learn. Don't yield to what everybody is learning. Discover it and take ownership of your learning. Have a goal and visualize where you want to apply it. Capture only what matches your goal, because when you have if you take, for instance, if you're studying to be a driver and you're studying for the driving test, and somewhere in your study you see how to build your car oil from scratch. It sounds interesting, but it's not what you need at that time. You should be reading road science, you should be reading different things. So if you have a goal, then you know that it's not all that is good at that point that you're meant to take out. Practice what you've learned. Practice recall. That's how the brain develops. You can't skip that process. You have to try to recall what it is that you've learned. You have to constantly try to recall what it is that you've learned. Share what you've learned for mastery. Something happens when you share. I know that sometimes in the corporate space, people want to, it's before anyways, but people want to hoard the knowledge they have, so they are the only ones that have it. But there's something that sharing does. It makes you a master. When people ask you questions, it gives you a different perspective to what it is that you thought you had learned. And in some of the things I'm going to be sharing soon, Dr. Obinna, am I prophesying? Yeah, please, can you help me pull up what it is
The
I'm going to?
slides.
Yes,
Okay.
please. So I'm going to be
It's not Dr.
sharing.
Obinna, please.
I'm prophesying. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I'm going to be sharing some tips on how you can use AI prompts to help increase your critical thinking, to help your reasoning, so that you're not just. Have you shared it?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay, great. So that you're not just there using AI as summarize this thing for me, do this thing for me. So these are AI prompts that can help with effective learning without replacing your thinking. Please can you scroll up a little? It's a PDF file. I saved it as a PDF. Okay, no, the first one. Okay, so yeah, so if you're building a learning plan, you can ask AI to help you learn, let's say, a particular skill in like 6 weeks. What that means is that it's going to give you step-by-step plans on how to learn it. Tell it, and in this prompt, you're not just going to say, help me learn AI in 6 weeks. You can tell it what your goal is, the current level you're at. So if you're a beginner, it helps it decide the kind of information it's going to fill you up with. What time do you have? If you're a weekend learner, if you can only learn at night, it's supposed to be in the prompt. This is not in your mind. It's part of what is meant to be in the prompt. And tell it to create a weekly plan with concepts that would help you with learning. But now, above all, like I wrote here, it's your discipline. AI can write all it wants to write. You have to discipline yourself to follow it. This is one of the ways, one of the prompts that you can use in improving critical thinking. Let's go to the next one, even while learning. Yeah, you can have an article and you want to turn it into an action plan. Upload the article to AI and tell it to ask you questions to confirm your goals. Of course, you would have also written your goals there. Upload the document, tell the AI to, these are my goals. And then you can tell it to produce maybe 5 key ideas from that document that aligns with your goal. 3 common mistakes, 5 practice skills, 7 days mini project, anything. Just ask it specific questions. Don't just throw prompts. I know that one of the things that people are selling AI tools with now is natural language. You can just write anything there, it processes it. But even in the natural language, AI, learning how to make AI prompts is a skill. You don't just, 2 of us can have the same task to put into AI, and then I'll get a different result than you. Let's go to the next one, please. Learning, using AI as your learning and practice body. So now, rather than just tell AI, summarize this and you cram it, you can tell it, this is what I want to learn. Ask me questions on it. And then 4 of those questions should entail me being able to recall certain things. 4 of those questions should entail application. 4 of those questions ask me and allow me to spot the errors there. Those are some ways that we can use. And then tell it to wait for your answer and grade the answer that you've given based on the information you've fed it with. The next one, please. Yeah, you can also use it to practice role play. Like Dr. Ebere said, for some of us that we are in diaspora, you probably don't have anybody to be discussing some things with. So you can use AI. Tell it to challenge you realistically. Tell it to ask you some questions, give you feedback, give you clarity, and tell it to increase the difficulty. But these are ways that you can use AI not to replace your thinking, but to become a better person. I know my time is up, but then I'll be sharing key takeaways. Identify what distracts you and stay away from them. Like some of us have already said, we read some books and they said some of us did not hear what they said very well, or we expected a little more from LinkedIn anyways. But then you identify what distracts you. Don't lie to yourself. If you know that you cannot stay on Instagram for 5 minutes, if you know LinkedIn status, WhatsApp status is your weakness, identify it. If you have to keep away your phone, keep it in a different room from where you're studying. Learning new things can be frustrating. The struggle is part of the plan. It's one of the ways your brain is wired to learn. So don't drop a book or don't drop a skill because it's frustrating to learn. If you're practicing something and it's very comfortable, you're likely not doing anything new. You're just revisiting what you already know. Know what is still relevant in the age you're living in. Don't go and start learning courses that no longer exist, such that by the time you're done learning what it is, you come out and realize you just prepared yourself for a world that no longer exists. With that, I will be ending my session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Can we hear it in the chats, please, guys? This is incredible. You will appreciate the quality of Chinwe's presentation if you understand that Chinwe read is it biochemistry or combined biological sciences?
Combined microbiology and biochemistry.
Microbiology. So when she said the things we're drawing, my zoology mind, I also read zoology, and I've also made the similar pivot like she had done career-wise. I'm in banking now. I understand finance. I teach accounting, graduate assistant in some of my professors in managerial finance. And all of those things have zero to do with what I read in school in my undergrad. It's so far away from each other that it's scary. In fact, one of my projects for this year, 2026, is to integrate both worlds, the world of zoology that I read in school and the world of finance, which is what I'm currently doing, and see if I can come up with a book that tells a story that interlocks both worlds. But this is an incredible lesson for us today. Thank you so much, Chinwe. I have a few, there were a lot of sound bites throughout your presentation, lots and lots of sound bites. One of them, you said, that information intake does not equate learning. That's fantastic. AI accelerates access, not learning for you. And I think I'm more fascinated with the loop framework, which is locate, organize, operationalize, and then practice. I think that's a fantastic way of capturing the entire thought in all of this. Then I think the question I would have had is regarding identifying what it is you want to even go ahead and learn. And I think Ebere, when he gave us his own presentation, likely captured that area, and then yours is like an important next step. In Ebere has talked about identifying personal problems. For instance, I spend too much time on my phone. That can be a personal problem that you can literally go and make entire learning plan on how to get over that, and using AI tools as very important access. Now, we're going to go into the next session so that we can take the question and answers towards the end.
Right.
We're going to go into the next session, and it's with our very own engineer, Pascal Odinde, who will be talking to us about knowledge from information to transformation. But just a quick update. When Ebere started earlier, he talked about Nigeria's match going on now. And many of us are here not watching the match. So the update is that we have qualified for semifinals. We beat Algeria 2-0. So you can all be very excited now. Is that for the match? Okay. So we can all be very excited that the outcome was fantastic for our boys in Morocco. And we will continue the next session, and I would like us to just pay rapt attention. We know more people will be joining now because they were probably watching the game before now. So we would expect others to join, but we'll yield the floor to Pascal Odinde, who will be talking to us on knowledge from transformation, from information to transformation. You have the floor, Pascal. Thank you.
Okay. And to share my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Oh, great. So thanks, Obinna. And I was actually thinking, what's the better way to wrap this session, right? Having heard from Dr. Ebere, and then who spoke extensively on reading, and then our AI expert, Chinwe, came and gave us useful nuggets that will basically transform our lives. And when I say useful nuggets, is the fact that she spoke extensively on the use of AI, which I think in this era, it's a leverage we have, and we can't afford to ignore it. So I'll be speaking directly to the topic knowledge from information to transformation. I'm basically designing a knowledge-driven life for 2026. If you look at the two bullet points already displayed on the screen, you see that the first one basically emphasized what Chinwe had already mentioned. And we are also in an era where true powers lies not in hoarding information, because there are certain things that people can easily just browse, and they will see they will basically get answers, right? But then again, how do we transform information? How do we move the needle? from just getting information to being a transformed personality. And that takes me to the second quote, or rather the first quote displayed on the screen, which is, the brain is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. In fact, when I saw this, that was few days ago when I was just thinking about what to really say about this topic, and and it got me thinking. And the catchword there is fire, right? You know, so it's a light set on a hill cannot be hidden. So what that simply means is that we have the potential to light the world, right? Our brain has the potential to assimilate, to accumulate, but most importantly, that is not what it is fully designed for. There's a place that action comes in to basically transform our lives. And I'll quickly share a typical example. Sometimes, in fact, it's just like this same period, but then in 2012, it should be the second week of 2012. And I was reading this book, The Powers and Principles of Vision by Mike Murdoch, right? And I remember I was going through this book, and it, it was unbelievable for me, because there are certain things I've never heard or seen. And then on the 17th, I still remember that day, inside that room right there at Owerri. Of course, I was still a student at Federal University of Technology, Owerri. And I sat down to pen down the things I want to be doing till I get to 80 years. There's a reason why I'm saying this, so that we can now see how taking action can truly transform our life. I'll just pick few. In fact, this is the book. I wrote down most of the things. You can see how old it is. I can go in details to share with you. So there's a point I want you to know, so that you see that action transforms things, irrespective of where you are at the moment. Dr. Eber talked about identifying a problem. In fact, the fact that there's an existence of problem means that there's a solution somewhere, and you are eligible to experience that solution. You are eligible to experience that part, the opposite side of the problem, which is basically the best version of your life. So I penned down certain things. I'll quickly pick on one. When I penned down I want to work for Shell after NYSC. Now, that didn't just happen. I didn't just manufacture the fact that I want to work for Shell, but I was privileged right there in school. I realized that people that were top in their classes, right? Then in photo, those in engineering, and thankfully, my department was also part of that group that Share normally comes to school to pick top four and all that. I had the information, right? So that helped me prepare. And of course, I engaged people that were already ahead of me, that have passed through that same process. The likes of Oya Shibweze, Obinna. I'm using their name because these are people that truly played a key role. But it didn't just happen, right? I had that information, and when there was an opportunity to act on them, knowing that, hey, that's also time during for tier IT, this company will come to this to come we come to our school to select top four students, and then they'll be given an opportunity to do an assessed internship, and from there you have the opportunity to work with them if you do well. You can imagine how that information helped me, right? And you can imagine how the knowledge of that book also helped me to then pen it down so I can visualize it. There are many other things I wrote, and of course that happened. In fact, when I penned it down, my thought is, oh, I want to graduate with first class, right? If I do that, or rather, when I graduate with first class, these people will come. I'll be among those top four. You know, those kind of conversation. But then, did I graduate with first class? The answer is no. But was I the best in my class? The answer is yes. Most importantly, I was eligible to participate in that opportunity that basically set that trajectory for my career, right? So it's very important that we realize that the difference between information and transformation is basically you myself, us taking action. And that leads me to the next slide. We speak to the fact that living a knowledge-driven life simply means making knowledge the foundation for how you think, decide, and act every day. Most of the tools has been shared by Dr. Berry and of course Chinwe, but it's also good to know that it is not just about collecting information. Imagine getting that information that there's an opportunity to work for this kind of company once I'm done with school, right? But it's now, okay, how can I utilize that information that will properly position me for the future, right? And you see that from what is penned down, you see that it's about transforming insights into behaviors and systems that will shape our future. And as already mentioned, see that the core shift between information and transformation is the knowledge, right? Beyond what is available, the raw data, and all that is processing that data, and that is basically um, processing that data leads to knowledge, right? And that speaks grossly to gaining insights and patterns. In fact, what I realized in my the department then was that they were always selecting some sort of persons, and I engaged I mean, almost like say the four sets ahead of me, right? I recognized what played out, and it was very easy to replicate the expectation from my employer, even when I was still in school, right? So, but it's also good to know that with the fact that we have enough information out there, becoming becomes even more important. And that is where most of us are really stuck at. The information is there. In fact, it's very cheap now to access information that previously you have to pay for. Now, leads me to basically talk about what a knowledge-driven life looks like. And I try to summarize it into these three key buckets. One is intentional learning. And I think Dr. Chinwe, right? Yes. Yes. So basically spoke to that intentional learning, which is basically seeking high quality in your relevant area of concern, right? There's a lot coming to us, but the the way to basically gain focus, we require that we identify what we need, right? And beyond that, it's also good for us to focus more on application over accumulation. Remember when Chinwe talked about during COVID, I think that was the era of certifications, where we had in fact, there were so many free online courses, right? And then any small thing you go and load it on LinkedIn. You've done this thing with Duke University, they are okay. Hey, don't get it. In fact, it's a phase, right? But beyond that, there's also that bit around understand, okay, all these things we've accumulated, how do we translate it into meaningful impact? And that's where action comes in. And then that leads me to something that is very important. You can have a knowledge of something, apply it, and it will not work the way you anticipated it. And that is fine. What that leaves you with is information for your next application. And that is very key. In fact, if there's something I will leave with us today, is for us to go, try and fail, fail again, and then succeed. Right? So let's go to the third item here, which is basically around continuous adaptation. And that basically speaks to we having or building that sort of learning mindset, or basically commit to a life of long learning, right? Because I mean, it exposes you to knowledge that will power your life. There are many examples to share, and this cuts across the the decision we make, the way we behave at our workplace, and then again, even in our own personal life. You see how knowledge-driven life can change, can orchestrate things that you never imagined, right? Like I was discussing with Cornelius a few days ago of how I truly don't know how to explain it, but having a knowledge of a possibility, right, led me to engage a GM. That now led me to getting an opportunity I never imagined. I think I'm confusing us. A knowledge of something, or a knowledge of what can be, gave me that strength to engage a general manager in my space, and that gave me um, the privilege to attain or acquire or become something I never imagined that happened recently. It's not even more than it actually happened on the 1st of this year. Now, having said all we've said, you can see that one thing that is very important in the conversation so far, from reading to learning to transformation, is mainly application. Application does the difference, does the magic. And if we want to move to the other side of us, irrespective of where you are, there is a next version of you yearning for expression. Whether you're already great at what you do, so long as you are alive, it's a proof that there is something more. There's a reason why you are still alive. So once um, once we recognize that there is a next version yearning for expression, therefore we must apply, irrespective of the outcome, whether it is successful or it failed. Because at the end of the day, success and failure doesn't mean anything. They are basically, what's it called again? I mean, how would I put it? Part of succeeding, I mean, embedded in that process of success is failure. So you can't then separate both of them. So what that simply means in essence is that we must make that commitment. And that leads me to my final slide, which is around designing your knowledge system, which basically captures the three key buckets: identifying the areas you want to grow, strengthen, the areas you want to see your life transform. In fact, you can even reinvent your life, just like what happened in the case of Chinwe, how she moved from biochemistry to where she is at the moment. And the other one is to apply this insight gathered per time. You might choose to apply daily decision, but let there be a shift from where you are today. And most importantly, we should track transformation and not just accumulation, because that is where power is unleashed. So we stop by asking us this question, or putting this to us. See, knowledge is potential power, but transformation itself is power unleashed. Do you want to be that person that is full of knowledge, but yet powerless? I think the next version of each and every one of us, deserves the opportunity to unleash that which is within. So I give us that platform today to go for knowledge, and not just going for knowledge, to apply what we've learned. And even in the process of applying what we learned, we encounter failure. Embrace failure, embrace crisis. In fact, I learned recently that crisis is not the opposite of peace. Rather, it is peace announcing its early arrival. So what that simply means is that whenever there's a challenge, whenever there's a difficulty, whenever there's a setback, there's something that you are yearning for that is at the other side. Now, I've said all that to say that we can move the needle from just reading to learning but most importantly, to becoming that which we deliver value, not just to self, but to the society. Thanks, and back to you, Obinna.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Where are your emojis? I'm not seeing emojis here, guys. Where are the fire emojis? Fire emojis. Aha. Nacheta. Nacheta is doing the Lord's work in the chat room there. Thank you so much, Pascal. This is incredible. And this is events like this is an opportunity to meet people, connect with people. This is my first time actually connecting with Pascal and through our mutual friend Cornelius. And
Yeah.
this project has been an exciting one. Thank you so much for that. From information to transformation. And I like so much how you were able to. In fact, there were lots of sound bites similar to Chinwe's presentation here. And I like the last one, which I know many of us will be taking home with, that irrespective of where you are, there is a next version of you that is yearning for expression, irrespective of where you are. Because it's I think it's quite easy for us to become satisfied, quote and unquote, to become relaxed because come on, I can take care of myself now. I'm taking care of 3 square meals. I mean, he said there is more in us that can be unleashed, but it has to follow that process of learning, taking action on your learning in order to build knowledge and then acting on those knowledge to become a transformed person. And thank you so much, Pascal, once more. We're going to open the floor to questions. Now, you can use the hand raise icon to put up your hands, or you can type in the chat room. We're gonna yield to questions, and those questions I will take down your sharing at this time, so that we can. Sorry, Pascal, can you stop sharing? Let me get this up here. Okay, I can do that from here as well. Okay, so we went through a couple. Please just keep putting up your hands. I will go with us one after the other as we start off with the questions now. We started with the entire symposium is covering reading, learning, and knowledge construction. And we had, for those of us who are just joining, we had Dr. Eberechukwu, who joined in from the UK, talking to us about reading and how to build a reading life that shapes your 2026. We also had Chinwe. Chinwe, you joined us from Hungary, right?
Well, I'm currently on vacation in the
On
US, so
vacation. Okay. Oh, in the US, we should talk.
yeah,
We should talk.
yeah.
Okay, great. So Chinwe joined us from our vacation address, and then talking to us about learning, self-directed learning in a noisy and AI-driven world. And you can't say that enough. The noisy part, you can't say it enough because it's actually quite noisy. Every time you show up online, it's one thing or the other that is popping up. And those are some of the informational noise that are coming up. But she's able to help us understand that you can direct yourself, you can design your learning, you can identify a learning opportunity, a goal rather, and ignore all other noise around it in order to focus on those things you want to achieve. And then using AI tools to accomplish that is another fascinating lesson that she gave us today. And then we just completed the panelist 3, which is Engineer Pascal Odinde, who is Engineer Pascal Odinde, who shared with us knowledge from information to transformation. And he talked a lot about designing knowledge-driven life and then using those knowledge to improve your decisions, your work, and your relationships as well. So we will go into questions. I know I have 2 people so far who have questions. Amadi, did you drop your hands? Well, I have China Zom Francisca, and then I have Mbotidem Ayo. You will correct me on that name later on. So China Zom, you have the floor. Can you unmute yourself and speak?
Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone, whatever the time is, wherever you are. Greetings. Amazing, amazing, amazing session. very impactful so far. So my question is about the use of AI and learning. Yeah, we know AI is still new, relatively new, and we can't really tell what AI will be able to do in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. So, and for me, I don't know about others. For me, I have this concern about privacy, how much information to give to AI when you're using it to learn or do any other thing. So my question is, while using AI to learn or do other things, are there precautionary measures that you can take, to protect privacy, to protect the amount of information you'll be giving out to it? And then if there are those precautionary measures, like what exactly are they? How can you use it, safely?
Okay.
That's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Chinazom. Chinwe, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts on that. So one of the principles, and then the floor is open if someone else has like other ideas. One of the principles that I work with when working with AI is any information you can't afford for someone else to see in the future, or if you know that if someone else stumbles on it in the future, it would haunt you, don't put it into AI. Even if you're generating prompts with it. Most of them claim that they are private, but any information that leaves you, you don't have control as to how far it can go. If it's an information that can be used against you in the future, you shouldn't put it out there. If it's an information you don't want someone else to have, you shouldn't put it out there. The goal is, if you need to learn something, put as minimal information as possible and get something out of the AI. That's why the whole role play thing is there. You don't necessarily have to put in, say, you're a business operations specialist in Genesys. You can say, assuming you're something else, something close. Try as much as possible. I remember that there was something that was trending at a particular time. People wrote to their AI tools and said, based on all the information I've fed you, tell me what you know about me. And they were fascinated what the AI knew, So if there is any information of such, I mean, people are dating AI these days and telling AI their personal secrets. This OpenAI is a platform that can be not hacked, but that can be explored anytime. These guys have any information you're putting in there, no matter how much they want to assure you that it's privatized. So I think any information, the thumb rule for me is that rule of thumb for me is that any information I don't want out there, I don't put it in AI, no matter how secure it claims to be. Any information that will come back to haunt me in the future, I don't put it out there. So if the floor is open in case someone has any other.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that. You've answered correctly, and I think that important note is whatever it is you don't want any other person to have. Hello? Is that Talks? What's the name?
I have a contribution. Sorry.
Okay, please go ahead.
Sorry, I can't see raise hand to feature to use.
Okay.
So thanks for that response. So what I want to add is, oftentimes we are so excited that we don't pay attention to some rules before using apps. So most of these apps, they have these privacy rules. But the question is, how many of us, sit back to even read those rules? Because we are always on the fast lane, because we are excited, so we overlook those things. So why I'm saying this is that even when you want to download apps on Google Play, you will see most of those apps are being rated, even reviewed. Take time and read the reviews. Take time and read the ratings. That will help you. That's the shortest way of protecting your privacy, so that you don't start, playing with fire. Again, especially around apps, it's good to test run them, but you can also ask someone who has used it before to have a quick, what will I say, guidance on what to do and what not to do. Like the first speaker said, what you think so far in the nearest future, not even in the farthest future, that you don't want it to get into this another party, another hand. When you see it on internet displayed, you'll be so embarrassed and ashamed of yourself. Don't even start it. Don't even test run it in the first place. So we can keep our privacy. It's so simple to do, just by asking questions, just by pulling back a bit and doing the right checks before using any app. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. We didn't catch your name, although your Monica said Talks. I'm just going to say thank you so much, Talks, for that contribution. And Chinazom, I'm hoping that this is clear enough. But one last addition is what a very good practice is to have a compartmentalized profile online, where you have most of these accounts require you to sign in with an email, for instance. And so a key practice is to have an email where you get your important emails and communications, and you get important information, banking information and stuff like that. You have another email for interactions on social media and a lot of the older platforms, so that when you have to test a platform like a new AI tool, you may want to use the one you can you can expect, maybe the social media one, which is like less priority for you, or less information access for you, and then the other one for more serious communications that you are working with. So creating those separate compartments for yourself can be a good way of interacting with both your online and digital activities online, and then especially with interacting with AIs in the future. So Odie, I have your hands up next. Could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi everyone, good evening. So
Good
first of
evening.
all, the pronunciation is Odi, not Odi.
Odie.
But
Odie.
no, yeah, it's
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you
No
so much.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to first of all start with thanking everyone for their presentation and also the questions. They've been insightful so far, right? But then there are some key questions that I have in mind, right? To the speakers, especially the first speaker, Doctor. You said you found a reason, you found one of the things that sparked your reading last year was you wanted to break out from social media addiction, right? So I also understand that beyond reading, it's the main game is learning. Like for me, it's quite boring for me to read a book, even though I'm trying to cut it off now. Cut off. You do more of watching YouTube videos and learning from YouTube. But then I'm trying to cut it off because of my screen time. It's now getting to 5 hours daily, and I feel it's a lot for me. So I would like to ask now, what kind of books would you recommend for starters who want to keep reading, start reading as a day-to-day practice, right? Not something key that's having a problem to solve, but yeah, if you call it a problem, it's still a problem. But the main thing is diverting my attention away from my phone. Because once I'm not with the phone, and once I'm not doing the YouTube, I need to fill my mind with something else. What kind of books would you suggest for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Odie, for that question.
Yeah, sorry, another question is
okay.
What factors do you consider when choosing a particular reading schedule and a particular reading goal?
Okay.
Because I think you mentioned that it's about the depth and not just about how many books you read. But even at that, having a depth, it should also be a SMART goal. How exactly would you put it so that you could measure your impact?
That's cool. I like that last question very well. But I think Dr. Berry would help us capture both questions, please. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Just to give a generic answer, because for starters, although I will have, if Cornell is still here, I will have probably ask Cornell to answer this question because I think he would do a better justice in recommending new books. But what I would say, again, from my personal experience, especially for many people who struggle with reading, who think that reading is boring, and you need to, because one reason to start reading, especially now there are multiple ways to learn, not just reading. You can watch YouTube videos. You rightly mentioned is to reduce your screen time. We still don't know the impact for some of us who almost all my work depends on looking at the laptop from morning till night. And I've got glasses now that I use when I read most times. But the thing is, if you need to learn, then you mustn't learn only through watching YouTube videos or being on your screen. You need to step away from that and read books. For starters, what I will always recommend is start with anything that you are interested in, that you find very interesting. If you're the type that if there's any personality that you find, for example, one of the people I like so much is Obama. I have my issues with him, but I find his personality fascinating. And one of the things I did when I liked him was to look for one of his books, which is Audacity of Hope. Quite a very big book. And I read it. I wasn't reading that book because I didn't have any issue with hope as at the time I was reading the book. But it's just that I found the author interesting, because one thing with book is you're not just reading a book, you're reading the thought pattern. You're reading a person, because people put themselves inside book. People put their experiences inside book. So what I will always recommend for starters is start with books that you find very interesting. If you're the type, again, my personal example, I like African books that exposes the potency of African culture. And that's why one book I will never get tired of reading is Things Fall Apart. I would never get tired of reading that book. So even if it's a book you read in secondary school, because we're talking about building a reading habit, even if it's a book you've read in primary school that you found interesting and you want to start cultivating reading time, you will be shocked if you go back to that book again and read it. With the things you know now, with the level of exposure you know now, if you go back to that book, the new insights you will catch from the book will amaze you. So in terms of the type of book I wouldn't want to start listing books. I would say Connor might be able to do a better job in listing the type of book you will read. But I don't have any list of books, I would say, because that is not how I cultivated my reading habit. Mine was, I read not just for curiosity, but to solve problems. And they are always fun, because I always tell people, for every problem you have in life, or for every goal, for everything you want to achieve in life, there is a book that has been written on it. And if you eventually find out there is no book has been written on that, then that means probably we're waiting for you to write that book.
To write the book.
But there's nothing. So that is exactly how we have to start. Start with something interesting you found very, very interesting. So it could be anything. It could be fictional. It could be non-fictional. And you see, that's the thing. Books are progressive. By the time you finish reading one, before the end, you'll find another book that aligns with what you've read, and you want to read it again. And so you keep going and keep going and keep going and keep building. So that's what I would recommend on that. I'm not sure I remember your second question.
Okay, let me see if I do remember. The second question was on. So, Odi, are you still there? Can you just ask your second question again? So that I don't.
I'm still here. So I was asking for you in particular, what made you choose a particular reading pattern, and also how to measure these goals. I know it's about depth, but even depth of books, how engrossed you are with a particular book, you should be able to measure it somehow on how it impacts you. So how were you able to get through with this?
So this was actually the next part I was going to present, because I didn't remember initially that I had only 10 minutes to present, and I didn't take note of the time.
If you have the slides, you want to put it up, that would be great. So
yes, one way through which you measure the impact of your book is how the book has helped you in emotional intelligence. It's about the relationship between reading and emotional intelligence and solving problems for you. I'll quickly share my screen. Give me a minute. Okay, so this was the next part I was going to present. Reading forms emotional intelligence and leadership. Psychological studies have found that there are 5 core components of emotional intelligence. One is self-awareness. Second is self-regulation. Third is empathy. Fourth is social awareness. And last one is relationship management. One way through which you measure the impact of your reading is how it affects these 5 things. The first one is self-awareness. What are the mechanisms? How does reading build self-awareness? One is it exposes you to diverse perspective. You begin to see things from different angles. You begin to have dialogue with people. For example, if I tell you now that I have discussed with Barack Obama, will you believe me? No, but I have discussed with him by reading his book. I've had interactions with him through reading that book, and I've asked myself questions, even though by the time you even finish the book, you find out you get answers to some of the questions you have. And then one thing is that you begin to recognize, this is how you know that you've gone in depth in a book. It makes you more self-aware. You see, as all of us here, we have our own individual biases, fears, and personal values. One thing that reading does for you, and this is one of the ways through which you measure how deep you've gone into a book, is it begins to expose your own biases. It begins to expose your fears. It makes clear your values. You begin, either the book aligns with your values or it challenges your values. And one of the impacts of this is it enhances your reflective capacity. You begin, I'm not sure if I said this initially when I was speaking before. You see, Chinwe talked about a lot on AI, this age of social media. I get surprised most times when, initially I said I deleted my social media apps, Facebook, Instagram, and all that. I did. I have downloaded them back now. I have them again because I have solved the problem at that point. You have solved because this whole thing is, it will also be very foolish not to have social media presence in this social media age. But if it's becoming a distraction, then that's when it becomes a problem. So I've solved that problem. I have it back. Sometimes when I log into social media right now, and you'll see many people are not even able to distinguish between AI images or AI videos generated through AI and real life events. Because most of us lack the ability to think critically or to reflect. So one of the things that when you see people that read very well, it's like you've built a habit of you've built a capacity to reflect, so that when you say something, because you see, as Chinwe said, the problem we have today is not because we don't have enough information. In fact, we have what we call information overload. The problem we have today is the ability to sieve out, the information that matters. So, and one of the things that reading does, it enhances that reflexive capacity. You reflect on things you see on social media and be able to say, this is bullshit, this doesn't make sense, and then you move on. Then you learn from failure without incurring reward cost. There are certain things, that's why I say that for every problem, for every issue you will encounter, if you're having a marital issue, if you're having a relationship issue, if you're having financial issue, there are books that address that issue. And by the time you read them, you prepare ahead. You don't have to experience that failure and learn from experience. You can build that experience, So that's why I said that it explores consequences before acting. You don't need to suffer the impact of failing before. Reading does that to you. And these are part of the ways through. So one of the things it does is build self-awareness. The second one is emotional regulation. Reading does this by slow reactive thinking. You see, many people are very See, this is so interesting because reading actually changes a whole lot about you. It's not just about information. It changes you as a person. You know that many people are very reactive, very impulsive. When something happens, okay, I've got kids at home, and they've not really started, because they're still very little. They've not started interacting with the outside world. So most times when they do things at home, I kind of ask myself, where is this coming from? Because they couldn't have learned this from anywhere, So there's this natural instinct to react to things, and this is in all of us. It's even as adults, if you're a selfish person, if you're an angry person, if you have an anger issue, if you're struggling with some personal issues, one of the things that reading helps you to do is because you've seen it in a book, if you've reflected on it, you've seen it somewhere. It helps you to slows your reaction to things. You build depth. there's something to draw from within that helps you know how you react to issues. It encourages that's part of the thing. It encourages contemplation rather than impulsivity and provides language for complex emotion. You learn more how to relate with so many people. Most people that read very well rarely have issues in relationship because you will have seen it somewhere. You will have read it, you will have encountered it in a book. And what is the outcome in terms of responding to how you measure how deep you've gone into a book is you become more composed under pressure. There are people, once they are faced under pressure, you begin to see they start fidgeting, they start jittering. It reflects in their voice. They're no longer composed. They can't think straight. One way through which you've gone deep into a book, you become more composed. Under pressure, you become better in making decisions, and you become more emotionally resilient. And then the last part is empathy, which addresses the last thing I was asked to talk about here, which is on leadership. Reading places you inside others' experience because you become more empathetic because you've seen it somewhere. You've seen it somewhere else. It expands your emotional range. You're no longer limited to your narrow personal views about life. You now know that there are many ways that you become more nuanced in terms of how you explore issues or how you address issues. You know that life is you are not always right. Life is not always about how you view it. There are other ways to say things, and this has a lot of leadership benefits. And one of them is you listen better, you respond with more nuance, and you understand unspoken emotional dynamics. So when someone is speaking, you know that there's something this person is saying that he's not saying. The only way through which you learn that skill is through deep reading. And so these are ways through which you know how far you've gone into reading, and it helps you. So self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy. Once these factors are built up in you, you know that you're beginning to catch the spirit of the books you're reading. So I'll stop here for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ebere. This is fascinating. Thank you so much. We're happy we were able to come back to having you respond to this. And thank you, Odi, for your question that triggered this incredible response from our very own Dr. Ebere. So I'm going to, we have, let me see. We have a couple of hands. Okay, Mbwetidem. Now your chance to correct me on how I've been murdering your name so far.
Good evening, everyone. You're actually right, although you're using syllables. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for at least pronouncing my name a bit okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. I have a request as well as questions. I've really been impacted through the session. I must appreciate everyone, facilitators on this platform. God bless you all. So my question goes thus. Personally, I've been so glued to hard copies books while reading, and I find it difficult reading online books. And in fact, I'm struggling. I have quite a number of books that I'm to read, but they're all online, and I'm struggling to read them. How do I overcome that? That's one. Then my other request goes to the first speaker that just finished. So please, can you give us the two books you earlier mentioned? That's one request. The second one is, please, is it appealing that every facilitator should be using slides? Reasons why I say that is because most of what the points they will mention, because of time, they'll be rushing over it. But if they have the slides displayed, someone can easily screenshot it or maybe reference purpose or sit down to copy it out, just like what the first speaker did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think your first question is regarding digital books, how best to be able to navigate them because it's a bit tough. And then the second question is the names of the book that Dr. Ebere had mentioned that he read. And then the third question is, or maybe that was like a suggestion that we can have slides so that next time you can always reference those slides. Okay, so I think we have slides for most of the speakers today, and the email communication we had sent to us, I'll be speaking with our team to see that as they send a follow-up email after this, they would attach those slides so you can reference them as well. going forward. Then for the second question, which is the book he talked about, somebody has typed one of them in the chat, which is Deep Focus. I think the second one, Dr. Berry, what was it? It was digital, cleansing?
Digital minimalism is by the
No.
same author. The author is Cal Newport. I'll put it on the
Cal Newport. Okay. Yeah. Then can we have just in a very few minutes, somebody can talk to us. Dr. Berry, do you want to take that in terms of the types of platforms to read, digital platforms for reading? But it has to be very brief because of our time.
See, that's the thing. I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this because I'm also struggling. I have that same problem that you have. I don't like reading. I don't like reading online because most of my work revolves around reading academic purpose, and I read most of them digitally. When it comes to reading stuff around personal development, I don't like reading them. It makes me feel like I'm still doing my job. So and so I don't like giving responses that are not based on lived experiences. So
Okay,
I don't
that's
have,
cool.
I don't have that answer at the
So-
moment. So if someone else, because this is where we're
Yes, we have
discussing.
someone. We have
So
someone
someone
else
should probably
trying to
help with
speak up
that.
now. Is that Solomon?
No, this is
Sorry,
Pascal.
Pascal,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Pascal,
Thank you.
Yes, so thanks for that question, and I'll be very sincere with my response. But before I answer that, I would like to confirm: do you have access to the online one too? Because one can have you can have access to not necessarily access to a book, but you know where to get this book online, but you can't access it because at the end of the day, what you are what you are pushing for is basically the information, right? And I remember those days. So I'm going to use a very quick example so that it creates that sense of urgency so that you recognize the phase you are per time. So I remember those days in school when we don't have some particular textbooks and we know our friends that have that textbook. So we basically find a way to utilize the textbooks at the end of the return it to them. The essence of doing that is for you to gain information, knowing that you don't have access to this book all the time. Now, in the case of the digital platform, because just listening to the question you asked, you say that you prefer reading that most of the time, basically you prefer reading hard copy. But then again, if you have access to online books that will benefit you for a given purpose, right? You need to create that sense of value. What is it I want to gain from this? Because that will give you that sort of motivation to utilize it while waiting for when you have access to a physical book. Like there is this book that I love so much, A Love Affair with Failure. It was written by this man, Kunle. Yeah, right. It was very hard for me to get the hard copy, but I utilized the online copy when I got at the end of the day, I actually got the hard copy, and I've been privileged to jot down things and all that. Very interesting book, right? So the point I'm trying to say is start from where you are. So if you have access to the book, then please, by all means, create that sense of value that there is something to get from this, right? And then utilize it pending when you have access to
a physical book.
Yeah.
I think that sums it up practically. That sums it up. My only addition is that I think Odi mentioned in the group that it's distractions with online reading. I agree. When you're reading on your phone, it can be distracting on your tablet or stuff like that. What people do is that you can read on devices that have no access to internet. So you don't have to continue getting notifications while you're reading. It will be very distracting. So cutting off all distractions is a good way to enjoy digital reading. Then the second point I would add to that is that you should view the platforms and media that these books are delivered to you as simply the most convenient for you at the time or the most affordable for you at the time. So if you can afford to buy the hard copy, go for it. If you prefer to read a hard copy, then go for a hard copy. If you prefer to read a digital copy, go for a digital copy. There are people that prefer to even listen to an audiobook. And so if whichever variant of this what's it called, platforms that this book is delivered in, the goal, like Pascal has pointed out, is to be interested in the knowledge it promises to deliver. And if you make that knowledge the priority, then you would not bother which medium it is on. Then Chinazom, I have your hand up, but I think your question was in the chat regarding you already have you host club meetings for young persons, and most of them engaging with young persons to get them to join the reading sessions is a bit challenging. You can see how many of us are in this group. You can understand that your challenge is common. Everybody else who indicated interest to be part of this, many of them did not also make it. So it's an ongoing thing. So our club Gamechangers Readership Promotion Network also faces similar challenges in inspiring people, but we are more encouraged by those that show up. So those that show up is the biggest encouragement we have to continue doing what we're doing, inspiring people to continue reading, helping them address the biggest challenges in reading, and so on and so forth. So there's no maybe silver bullet in how to address that. The biggest way to approach it is to keep doing what you're doing, keep making it as exciting as possible, keep inspiring people, giving them an opportunity to talk about their reading experiences and all that, and others would be able to pick up from there.
Yeah, I would like to add something just shortly.
Okay, yes.
To answer Chinazom's question, it will be brief. So one other thing for young people is we need to change what we are selling. Growing up, they will tell us that if you read, you would get a good job. Now we see people that don't even know the way to school, and they are the ones funding the ones going to school. So we need to change what we are selling. Find what interests the young person. Tell them they will see the world differently. Tell them they will be in charge of their lives, in charge of their learning. Find out the kind of books that interest them. Don't downplay any kind of book when you're trying to introduce people to learning. Let them know that the pathway to some of the things they are seeking, they can find it in books. The people that they admire, like Dr. Ebere said, they can interact with them through books. No more selling if you go to school, you will get a good job, because it's no longer valid in the times that we live in. And then to that effect, I would like to recommend some stuff that would also help. There is Everand. Everand used to be Scribd. It's an online platform, and then it has quite a number of audiobooks. I'm going to put in the name. Amazon Kindle as well. So if you're someone that you have a lot of things that you're doing at the same time and you need to still read at the same time, some of these tools can help you. You can listen to the books over and over again. Some of the books says 3 hours, and you have more than 3 hours. Probably you're traveling or doing something, and you can't just look at a book in that long time. Just put it on your earpiece and listen to it. So that's what I wanted to contribute. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chinwe, for that. We'll have a last question from Favor. I'm looking at the time because we have a few minutes to the end of our session today. And Favor, please, could you make your question brief? You can unmute yourself, Favor Samuel. Unless we have answered your question already. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, good day all.
Good day.
I have a question. I love reading. I read a lot. But when it comes to reading motivational, self-building and all those books, I tend to lag behind. And I've been trying to work on the problem since I need like a form of guidance to see to pinpoint how I can get to read more motivational book or self-building book more, self-production book more.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it was a very good segue to announce the reading list for 2026. So Gamechangers Readership Promotion Network, as part of what we do, in addition to events like this, which I must have mentioned at the beginning, is going to be a quarterly session. So we're going to have another session of this in April, which is going to be the second quarter of the year. And then another one down the road, and 4 times each year, we're going to be having sessions like this to engage with people. In addition to that, we also have a reading club where most people are part of, and this is our reading list on the screen at this time, the 2026 books we're reading. And most of our books are non-fiction books, and so it can be a best way to go about it. The reason why I'm recommending this method is that reading along with people, first of all, we have carefully curated this list to address broad interests of most people who are looking for self-development books or areas of development around personal development, personal effectiveness, leadership, relationship management, and stuff like that. And we are also reading along with others would be an excellent way of building that skill or effort of reading nonfiction books. Nonfiction books are not like fiction books that yield themselves to their stories. So fiction books, sometimes when I'm reading some fiction books, the curiosity to know what happens next to the character can sustain you through the entire reading. But for nonfiction books, you're going in with a purpose. For instance, what we're reading now in January is The 5 Types of Wealth. And the author, Sahil Bloom, is one of those tech guys or young tech billionaires in Wall Street. I mean, did I say Wall Street? Or in San Francisco, which is like Silicon Valley. And one of the interesting things is the level of conversations he has had with most of the wealthiest people in the world and how they are able to identify categories of wealth. And so if you want to go into such a book, you have an interest in that space and you begin to dig through it, working with a list like this will go a long way to help you make it a more regular habit moving forward. Please, Mbwetidem, I don't think we can have time for that question. You can type it in the chat and maybe we can be able to respond to it. I want to take quickly the following announcements. The next edition we know is going to be in April, like I have mentioned. I've also talked about our reading list. We have in our previous communications to every one of us on the group included our social media handles. You can follow us there. And this recording will also be on our YouTube so that you can go back to revisit some of the lessons the presenters have talked about today. And so without much to say, I want to thank our panelists today. Dr. Ebere, it's been incredible having you speak to us and sharing those incredible lessons around reading. Chinwe, thank you so much for your incredible insights on learning. And Pascal, thank you for both your personal testimonies and your incredible talk around from learning, moving from information to transformation. It's been wonderful moderating today's session, and I look forward to connecting with us again in the next quarter. Thank you, everyone, and do have yourselves a wonderful night rest and afternoon, wherever it is you are now. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, goodbye.